Good morning. We are continuing to work through the scriptures in chronological order, and we are ready for Exodus 7 and 8 today. Then the Lord said to Moses, "See, I have made you like God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron will be your prophet. You are to say everything I command you, and your brother Aaron is to tell Pharaoh to let the Israelite people go out of his country. But I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and though I multiply my signs and wonders in Egypt, he will not listen to you. Then I will lay my hand on Egypt, and with mighty acts of judgment, I will bring out my divisions, my people, the Israelites. And the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord when I stretch out my hand against Egypt and bring the Israelites out of it." Moses and Aaron did just as the Lord commanded them. Moses was 80 years old and Aaron 83 when they spoke to Pharaoh. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "When Pharaoh says to you, 'Perform a miracle,' then say to Aaron, 'Take your staff and throw it down before Pharaoh, and it will become a snake.'" So Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and did just as the Lord commanded. Aaron threw his staff down in front of Pharaoh and his officials, and it became a snake. Pharaoh then summoned wise men and sorcerers, and the Egyptian magicians also did the same things by their secret arts. Each one threw down his staff, and it became a snake. But Aaron's staff swallowed up their staffs. Yet Pharaoh's heart became hard, and he would not listen to them, just as the Lord had said. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Pharaoh's heart is unyielding. He refuses to let the people go. Go to Pharaoh in the morning as he goes out to the river. Confront him on the bank of the Nile, and take in your hand the staff that was changed into a snake. Then say to him, 'The Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has sent me to say to you, let my people go, so that they may worship me in the wilderness. But until now you have not listened. This is what the Lord says. By this you will know that I am the Lord. With the staff that is in my hand, I will strike the water of the Nile, and it will be changed into blood. The fish in the Nile will die, and the river will stink. The Egyptians will not be able to drink its water." The Lord said to Moses, "Tell Aaron, take your staff and stretch out your hand over the waters of Egypt, over the streams and canals, over the ponds and all the reservoirs, and they will turn to blood. Blood will be everywhere in Egypt, even in vessels of wood and stone." Moses and Aaron did just as the Lord had commanded. He raised his staff in the presence of Pharaoh and his officials and struck the water of the Nile, and all the water was changed into blood. The fish in the Nile died, and the river smelled so bad that the Egyptians could not drink its water. Blood was everywhere in Egypt. But the Egyptian magicians did the same things by their secret arts, and Pharaoh's heart became hard. He would not listen to Moses and Aaron, just as the Lord had said. Instead, he turned and went into his palace and did not take even this to heart. And all the Egyptians dug along the Nile to get drinking water, because they could not drink the water of the river. Okay, a couple things here that I just want to point out. The magicians and the sorcerers of the day were not actually changing a staff into a snake and water into blood. They were doing some kind of trick to make it look that way, just as we have people who can do tricks today. And we have some amazing magicians today who can just blow your mind with the things that they can make it look like they are doing. And that's what these people did. Moses and Aaron are performing real feats. This water cannot be drank. It is blood. I also want to point out that it says multiple times that God hardens Pharaoh's heart. This reminds me that God can take those bad situations and bring good from them. And whether God was hardening his heart or that was the perception of Moses and Aaron, Moses who wrote this book, because they wanted to show that God had intentions all along. God knew what was going to happen. And God did. I fully believe that. Whether Pharaoh's heart was hard or God hardened it, whatever the situation may have been, he was not going to let the people go. I believe that God gives us free will. I believe that Pharaoh had free will. Pharaoh had a hard heart. Pharaoh did not want to let go of his workforce. And so I don't think God forces us to do anything. Pharaoh was created in a certain way, like each of one of us are. We all have personalities and attitudes and ways we respond to things, partially that we're just born with. And Pharaoh was born into this situation where he had command of all of these people, and he didn't want to lose that. So I guess when you look at it like that, Pharaoh had a hard heart. That's the way he was built. That's the way he was knit in his mother's womb. And God will use it for good, because that's what God does for those who trust him. So chapter 8, 7 days passed after the Lord struck the Nile. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh and say to him, 'This is what the Lord says, let my people go so that they may worship me. If you refuse to let them go, I will send a plague of frogs on your whole country. The Nile will teem with frogs. They will come up into your palace and your bedroom and onto your bed, into the houses of your officials and on your people and into your ovens and kneading troughs. The frogs will come up on you and your people and all your officials.' Then the Lord said to Moses, 'Tell Aaron, stretch out your hand with your staff over the streams and canals and ponds and make frogs come up on the land of Egypt.'" Let's see the sorcerers and the magicians try to replicate this. So Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land. But the magicians did the same things by their secret arts. They also made frogs come up on the land of Egypt. Wow. Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, "Pray to the Lord to take the frogs away from me and my people, and I will let your people go to offer sacrifices to the Lord." Now this is interesting, because even though Pharaoh's magicians and sorcerers, it says, were able to do the same thing, Pharaoh summons Moses and Aaron. He knows what they're doing is a trick, his sorcerers and his magicians. But Moses and Aaron's actions are totally different. And so Pharaoh calls them to him, not as magicians, not as sorcerers, but Moses and Aaron, and says, "Pray to the Lord." And that's the L, capital L, and then small capital O-R-D, so Yahweh. Pray to your God, Yahweh. Pray to I Am, the God that you worship. Pray to the Lord to take the frogs away from me and my people, and I will let your people go to offer sacrifices to the Lord, to Yahweh. Again, written so that we know it's talking about the great I Am. Moses said to Pharaoh, "I leave to you the honor of setting the time for me to pray for you and your officials and your people, that you and those your houses may be rid of the frogs, except for those that remain in the Nile." "Tomorrow," Pharaoh said. Moses replied, "It will be as you say, so that you may know there is no one like the Lord our God. The frogs will leave you and your houses, your officials and your people. They will remain only in the Nile." So this is Pharaoh doing a little test here, and Moses trying to make a very specific point. You set the time and day. This isn't a trick. When I pray to God, he'll do what I pray to him to do. And you can even set the time. And so that's what Pharaoh does tomorrow. After Moses and Aaron left Pharaoh, Moses cried out to the Lord about the frogs he had brought on Pharaoh. And the Lord did what Moses asked. The frogs died in the houses, in the courtyards, and in the fields. They were piled into heaps, and the land reeked of them. Can you imagine? But when Pharaoh saw that there was relief, he hardened his heart and would not listen to Moses and Aaron, just as the Lord had said. So this says Pharaoh hardened his own heart. Pharaoh hardened his heart. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Tell Aaron, stretch out your staff and strike the dust of the ground. And throughout the land of Egypt, the dust will become gnats." They did this. And when Aaron stretched out his hand with the staff and struck the dust of the ground, gnats came on people and animals. All the dust throughout the land of Egypt became gnats. And when the magicians tried to produce gnats by their secret arts, they could not. Since the gnats were on people and animals everywhere, the magicians said to Pharaoh, "This is the finger of God." Now they don't say Yahweh, they say God, but this is with a capital G. They're using the word that they're familiar with for the false gods that they worship, but they are referring to the Hebrew God. They might not know his name. They don't know his name is Yahweh, but they are talking about God. But Pharaoh's heart was hard, and he would not listen, just as the Lord had said. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Get up early in the morning and confront Pharaoh as he goes to the river, and say to him, 'This is what the Lord says. Let my people go so that they may worship me. If you do not let my people go, I will send swarms of flies on you and your officials, on your people and into your houses. The houses of the Egyptians will be full of flies. Even the ground will be covered with them. But on that day, I will deal differently with the land of Goshen." Now, you might remember that when Joseph's family came and settled in Egypt, that's where they went, was Goshen. That's where the Hebrew people, the Israelite people, were as shepherds, because the Egyptians didn't want them with them. And so they were in Goshen, a separate place, until they were taken into slavery. And so here they're referring to Goshen again. "On that day, I will deal differently with the land of Goshen, where my people live. No swarms of flies will be there, so that you will know that I, the Lord, am in this land. I will make a distinction between my people and your people. This sign will occur tomorrow." And the Lord did this. Dense swarms of flies poured into Pharaoh's palace and into the houses of the officials. Throughout Egypt, the land was ruined by the flies. Then Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, "Go, sacrifice to your God here in the land." But Moses said, "That would not be right. The sacrifices we offer the Lord our God would be detestable to the Egyptians. And if we offer sacrifices that are detestable in their eyes, will they not stone us? We must take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God as he commands us." Pharaoh said, "I will let you go to offer sacrifices to the Lord your God in the wilderness, but you must not go very far. Now pray for me." Moses answered, "As soon as I leave you, I will pray to the Lord, and tomorrow the flies will leave Pharaoh and his officials and his people. Only let Pharaoh be sure that he does not act deceitfully again by not letting the people go to offer sacrifices to the Lord." Moses is saying to him, "I'm going to pray to God, but you need to do what you're saying you're going to do. You need to be acting in good faith here, not being deceitful." Then Moses left Pharaoh and prayed to the Lord, and the Lord did what Moses asked. The flies left Pharaoh and his officials and his people. Not a fly remained. But this time also, Pharaoh hardened his heart and would not let the people go. Pharaoh. Such an important story for the Israelite people. One that I'm sure was told many, 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 many times throughout the centuries as they celebrated this moment in history. It doesn't seem like much of a celebration now, but they would know the whole story. And we're just in the middle of the story at this point. So I hope that you will be here tomorrow and you will continue this very important event with me as we continue to walk through the scriptures. I'll see you then.